During the First World War in 1916, the British formed the South Persia Rifles in response to German influence in southern Iran in 1915 and early 1916. Most notably was Wilhelm Vasmus of Persia, aka the German Lawrence of Arabia, and his efforts in aiding tribal groups who were already in rebellion against the British. Another additional threat in the area was the German expedition to Afghanistan, which passed through Persia to try to persuade Afghanistan to join the war on the side of the Central Powers. As a result of these incursions, the British had to divert troops into Iran rather than into the Mesopotamian front against the Ottoman Empire. South Persia Rifles was a measure to use locally raised troops rather than British or Indian units, so that the latter could be sent to the main campaign against the Ottoman Empire. With the assent of the Shah's government, the British were allowed to form a military force of up to 11,000 men to quell the resistant tribes and maintain order. Sir Percy Sykes was selected by the British to command this new force. In March of 1916, he landed in Bandar Abbas with a few British officers, NCOs, and a company of Indian soldiers. Most of his early recruits came from pro-British tribes, and Sykes and his men spread out to cities in southern Iran, such as Yazd, Efshafa, and Shiraz, as well as Bandar Abbas. Through the summer and fall of 1916, the South Persia Rifles conducted what the British considered mopping up operations. Sykes also gained formal recognition for the rifles from the Iranian government. By December 1916, the South Persia Rifles had brigades located at Shiraz, Karman, and Bandar Abbas. Sykes had about 3,300 infantry, 450 cavalry, as well as several artillery pieces and a machine gun. Training, equipment, and organization for the rifles was along the lines of the British Indian Army, and winter closed many roads as the rifles brought relief from tribal attacks. Sykes would use this time to train his forces, and in 1917, he reached an agreement with the Kashgai tribe, ending their raids, allowing him to focus on other resistive tribes. The rifles then went after these tribes and in their local strongholds, as well as their crops and livestock, crippling them logistically so they could not continue to raid the British supply lines and garrisons. And by June of 1917, the government that had agreed to the establishment of the rifles fell, and the new Iranian prime minister and cabinet would not recognize them. Iranian attitudes towards the South Persia Rifles changed, and by late 1917, there was intense hostilities towards the rifles and the British. The British even approached the United States with a proposal to take the rifles over. However, the Americans declined due to a lack of officers who could speak Persian or who were knowledgeable about Iran itself. In 1918, word of the worsening situation on the Western Front in France affected the morale of the Iranians within the South Persia Rifles, and many would desert the unit. The rebelling tribes in southern Iran then became bolder in attacking rifle outposts. The strength of the South Persia Rifles in April of that year was about 7,000, and Iranian resentment towards the unit would only increase. Shia mullahs played a role in encouraging resistance against the British, and the Shiraz Brigade experienced poor morale, especially amongst the former gendarmes within its ranks. The desertions and poor morales limited the unit's use, and it would nearly be disbanded. Desertion rates greatly reduced the size of the Fars Brigade. However, the Kerman Brigade remained loyal to Britain. Eventually, more regular British units had been sent into Persia to reinforce the rifles and replenish their numbers, and by October of 1918, most tribal resistance had been broken. After the war, the British continued to maintain the rifles within Iran. Following the end of World War I, Iran had been trying to recreate its armed forces and control internal unrest. While the British supported the development of the new Iranian army to keep out the new Soviet influence, they realized that in the long run the Iranians would not accept the South Persia Rifles being run by foreigners. However, the British were not willing to see it merged into the new Iranian army, and in 1921 they disbanded the South Persia Rifles, with many former officers and NCOs of the unit joining the new Iranian army and forming the baseline for Iran's new armed forces. And that is the South Persia Rifles and their role in World War I in Iran. Did you know about them before this video? What other World War I stories would you like for me to cover? Write in the comments, and thank you for watching.